Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. India and China reach an agreement to resume patrolling across the contested border in eastern Ladakh. This marks a significant step in easing tensions since the 2020 Galwan clashes. India's Foreign Secretary says this development could lead to eventual disengagement at the border. Sensex and Nifty end with marginal losses after a volatile session. Midcaps see sharper cuts with the index losing nearly 1,000 points. Gold prices hit a record high once again as safe haven prices continue. Adar Poonawalla Serene Production signs a deal to acquire 50% stake in Karan Johar's Dharma Productions for 1,000 crore rupees. Johar will hold the remaining 50% stake and will continue as the executive chairperson. India's aviation minister rules out any conspiracy as of now after airlines get nearly 100 hoax bomb threats in the last 7 days. Minister says the government is considering stricter punishment by amending the law. Shares of Ultratech decline after a disappointing second quarter. Profits decline 36% and margins contract. Revenue down 2% even as it meets the street's expectations. Israeli army launches a wave of attacks across Lebanon, strikes several buildings in Beirut belonging to a Hezbollah-run bank. The World Health Organization says it will be evacuating 1,000 women and children needing medical care from Gaza to Europe. Officials of the National Investigation Agency arrive at the crime scene where 7 employees of an infrastructure company were gunned down by militants in Jammu and Kashmir. This is the first major attack on an infra project as workers building a tunnel are targeted. The board of Zomatos set to meet tomorrow to consider an 8,500 crore rupee fundraise. Company also plans to approach RBI to restrict foreign holding to 49%. Zomato founder Deepinder Goyal launches a new health tech venture in his personal capacity. And also on the show, Hyundai India is set to drive into the Lal Street with much fanfare. The company's India journey started nearly 3 decades ago. We take a look back a little later on the show. Well, let's begin with a look at the markets. The markets failed to hold opening gains to end the day lower amidst volatility. Nifty and sensex fell 0.25%, while banks fell in line with the blue chips. Midcaps took it on the chin, with the index falling nearly 2%. And well, the RBI bulletin for the month of October has projected India's Q2 GDP growth at 6.8%. The bulletin said that India's aggregate demand continues to grow according to high-frequency indicators, but the momentum has been slower than preceding quarters. This has led to slight downgrade to its earlier forecast of 7%. However, the bulletin also says that the slowdown could be temporary and consumer confidence could pick up once the festive season is underway in full swing. And well, here's the big story this evening. India and China have reached an agreement to resume patrolling across the contested border in eastern Ladakh. This marks a significant step in easing the tensions between both nations after the 2020 clashes between both armies. India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that the agreement is a result of the discussion that have taken place over several weeks. Military leaders from India and China have held more than 30 rounds of negotiations after the Galwan clashes. 20 soldiers died in the clashes, including Major General Santosh Babu. China has not officially announced its casualties. Relationship between both nations have been strained since no high-level diplomatic meetings announcing the patrolling agreement. The Foreign Secretary said this development could lead to an eventual disengagement at the border. The announcement comes just a day ahead of the BRICS summit in Russia, where Prime Minister Modi will come face-to-face with China's President Xi Jinping.
You're aware of the events that took place in 2020 in several areas along the line of actual control. We've been in discussions with Chinese interlocutors, both at a diplomatic level, through the WMCC, as was mentioned earlier as well, and through the at the military level as well, through meetings of the military commanders at various levels. These discussions had in the past resulted in the resolution of standoffs at various locations. You're also aware that there were a few areas and few locations where the standoff had not been resolved. Now, as a result of the discussions that have taken place over the last several weeks, an agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas.
You know, this is a tremendous tribute to the hard-working efforts by the governments of India and China and the mechanisms that have been in place that allowed this breakthrough to happen. So if you look at it, there were 31 meetings in the last 4 years of the WMCC, the Working Mechanism on Control and Coordination on the Indo-China border. And there were 21 military-level meetings also in the last 4 years on differences along the border. Now, very hard-working, very painstaking, going at it.
This is a good breakthrough that has come out. It has been, I think the agreement was signed today. Basically, what it implies is that you can go back to the pre-2020 positions as what has been talked about by the Foreign Secretary as well as the External Affairs Minister, which is actually the third step process that we have been talking about. The first step seems to have been achieved at this point in time. Now we need to go ahead and talk about the de-escalation and other issues.
The line of actual control remains continue to remain undefined. But I think that what happened now is only a reflection of the intention of both leaders well before the summit. I think that don't forget that both President Xi and Modi already highlighted the importance of de-escalation.
Now, Israel has deepened its offensive in Beirut after striking several financial institutions linked to Hezbollah. The Israeli military also launched at least 12 missiles that hit Beirut's southern suburbs. Israel's foreign minister signaled more attacks on Hezbollah, saying its forces will keep striking the Iranian proxy until it collapses. Israeli forces have also intensified attacks across Gaza. Several Palestinians were wounded after an attack on a refugee camp in northern Gaza. Israeli forces are claiming that it is using precision strikes against alleged regrouping efforts by the Hamas in Gaza. U.S. defense officials have said that Israel should scale back its strikes in Beirut and push for negotiations.
The numbers of casualties civilian casualties have been far too high. We'd like to see, Israel scale back on some of the strikes that it's taking, especially in and around Beirut. And we'd like to see things transition to some sort of negotiation that would allow civilians on both sides of the border to return to their homes.
I had a very nice call with him. He called me up yesterday morning. We talked. I congratulated him on obviously doing a very good job keeping Israel safe. He's doing very well. He calls me on occasion. I think he wants my views on things. He's had very little cooperation from the White House, as you know. They didn't want him to do anything, and they would not be in the good position they're in right now if they listened to the White House.
With the killing of Sinwar, this creates an opening that I believe we must take full advantage of to dedicate ourselves to ending this war and bringing the hostages home.
But it's not working so far.
You know what? Listen, as it relates to the issues in the Middle East and in particular in that region, it has never been easy. But that doesn't mean we give up, okay? It is always going to be difficult. It does not mean we give up.
Well, here's another development moving the markets worldwide. China has cut its benchmark lending rates in a bid to revive the economy. The one-year loan prime rate was reduced by 25 basis points, and the five-year rate was reduced by 25 basis points. The one-year rate influences corporate loans and most household loans in China, while the five-year LPR rate is a benchmark for mortgage rates. And gold prices have touched a new record high yet again. The yellow metal has surged over 33% so far in 2024 and has recorded the best annual gain in 14 years. Silver also touched its 12-year high after surging 42% in 2024 so far. In earnings corner, cement major Ultratech has reported a weak second quarter. Net profit and margins missed the street's expectations, while revenue was in line. On an annual basis, net profit dropped by 36%, while revenue declined by about 2%. The company's domestic sales volume grew by 3%, which was largely in line with the expectations. And staying with earnings, Bajaj Housing Finance reported a healthy set of numbers in the second quarter. Net profit rose by 21% to 545 crore rupees, while revenue also jumped a little over 21% to 2,410 crore rupees on an annual basis. Now, here's the big national story. Nearly 100 hoax bomb threats in the last 7 days have left the Indian aviation sector in a state of panic. All major airlines, including Air India, Vistara, Indigo, Akasa Air and SpiceJet, have been at the receiving end of these threats, primarily originating from social media and emails. Now, while all the threats turned out to be fake so far, it has disrupted flight schedules, caused inconvenience to passengers and adding to airlines' expenses. The government has already held a series of meetings with airlines and the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security to find a way to curb this menace. Addressing a press conference earlier today, Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu said that they are considering amending a 42-year-old legislation to ensure stricter punishment against the perpetrators. This also includes putting them on a no-fly list. Naidu ruled out for now any conspiracy behind the hoax threats as of now.
From the ministry, we have thought of some legislative action also, if it is required, which direction should be moving. And we have come to the conclusion that there are two areas that we can explore. One is the amendment in aircraft security rules. One of the idea that we want to propagate by changing these rules is, once we catch hold of the perpetrator who is behind this, we want to put them in the no-fly list. And the second one is the suppression of unlawful acts against safety of Civil Aviation Act.
Now, Disney will announce CEO Bob Iger's replacement in nearly 2026. The company board has also named James Gorman as the chairman of Disney, with effect from the 2nd of January 2025. Gorman will replace Mark Parker, who will be stepping down from the board after 9 years. Reports said that Disney had plans to announce Iger's successor in 2025. However, the date was pushed back to 2026 to give the board more time to assess both external and internal candidates. Now, more action from the world of cinema. Adar Poonawala's Serene Productions has signed a deal to buy 50% stake in Karan Johar's Dharma Productions. This deal values Dharma production at 2,000 crore rupees. Shilpa Rani Petta now joins us with more. Shilpa, Dharma Productions gets 1,000 crore rupees shot in the arm from vaccine czar. And with this, the Adar Poonawala family marks yet another foray. Tell us what else you're picking up.
Well, from vaccines now to films, a rather unusual contender, Adar Poonawala, like you said, has picked up a 50% stake in Karan Johar's Dharma Productions. Now, this is Poonawala's third big business bet, in fact, in the last 3 years. First was a foray into the NBFC segment with Magma FinCorp in May 2021, now which has been renamed to Poonawala FinCorp. In April 2023, doubled its investment in Biocon Biologics to about $300 million. And now the latest is Poonawala's foray into the showbiz. Now, let's talk about this deal. Now, this deal, which includes Dharma Productions and its digital content arm Dharmatic, values Dharma at 2,000 crore rupees, and there is no change at the head. Karan Johar and CEO Apurva Mehta will continue to run the show. But this deal gives Dharma the capital for its big budget films to build more franchises and in general to do more with content production. Now, this deal, remember, comes at a time where the industry has been struggling. Cost of production and of artists has been soaring. Most movies in the past year have failed to rake in the moolah. Most of Dharma's big budget bets, in fact, in the past several years, like Kalank, most recently Kill, or even a couple of years ago Brahmastra, did not work as anticipated. And of course, there's a lot of competition coming in from OTTs. And in addition to this, Karan Johar has also been looking to sort of monetize his stake. Now, if you look at Dharma financials, revenue for FY24 fell about 50%, while net profit plummeted over 90%. Now, the revenue decline was mainly led by the distribution and the exhibition segment. But there was also a decline that came in from the satellite rights segment too. But the digital platform, that grew grew nearly 16%. And this, sort of paints a picture of the current scenario of the entertainment industry, and therefore this partnership, which is hoping to reshape the industry to cater to a digital-first audience of today and also embrace new platforms and formats. Analysts are also saying that they're hopeful that this deal, bringing in more funds into the industry, will translate into a more sustainable content pipeline down the line as well. Back to you.
Right, Shilpa, thanks a lot for breaking down those numbers for us. Moving ahead now, fintech major PhonePe trimmed its losses by nearly 30% to 1,996 crore rupees in FY24. As per its annual financial report, its revenue from operations grew by 85% from the previous year. 10% of this revenue came from digital payment subsidiaries from the government. PhonePe also achieved profitability with an adjusted profit after tax of nearly 200 crore rupees in FY24. The company has reduced its customer support staff by 60% over the last 5 years to use an AI chatbot for customer service. Its customer support staff shrank from 1,100 to just over 400. Now, the board of Zomato will meet tomorrow to consider an 8,500 crore rupee fundraise. The move is likely to take domestic shareholding above 50%. Zomato is also likely to approach the RBI to restrict the shareholding of foreign institutional investors to 49%. Nimesh Shah is joining us now with more. Nimesh.
Well, all eyes will be in the Zomato board meet tomorrow, where the company is going to consider not only the earnings but the fundraising as well. I understand from sources that the board is likely to approve a $1 billion QIP issue along with the results. Now, this will help the domestic holding to go up above 50%. And after the fundraising, I understand the company is likely to write to RBI to cap the FI holding at 49%. Essentially, this has been done to make sure that it eases off the business for Blinkit. Now, because there are a lot of restrictions, FDI restrictions, as far as the e-com business is concerned. The combined holding as of now in Zomato for the FIs and FDIs is little over 50%. So that's likely to fall after the QIP issue of $1 billion.
Right, Nimesh, thanks so much for that. Now, speaking of Zomato, CEO Deepinder Goyal has incorporated a new venture called Continue, which will focus on the health tracking and mental health solutions. A post on social media, Goyal said that the startup is entirely funded by him and is currently being used to track his vitals alone. It is yet to be available in public domain. In national news, at least 7 people were killed when militants opened fire on a construction site in Jammu and Kashmir's Gandarbal district. Officials of the National Investigation Agency have arrived at the crime scene to conduct a probe. Officials also identified the victims as a doctor, laborers and staff of a contractor working on a tunnel for the Srinagar to Leh National Highway. This is the first major attack on an infrastructure project where workers building a tunnel were targeted. The Supreme Court has granted 2 weeks to the Centre-appointed expert committee to file its report on the NEET UG reforms. This comes after the government filed a plea seeking the 2-week extension and cited the report was almost finished and the panel needed some more time to finalize its recommendations. Including today, the CJI Justice Chandrachud has 10 working days in office, and there are 10 major cases which are pending before him in different stages. So let's take a look at the key matters that are awaiting his decision. Number 1, Byju's insolvency, a high-stakes battle involving a fallen star of the startup universe. The Supreme Court needs to decide on the insolvency proceedings against the edtech company, assume significance with US lenders alleging siphoning off of funds by Byju Ravindran and his brother. The Supreme Court reserved the judgment in August of 2024. Number 2, Google versus startups. The competition watchdog had alleged abuse of market dominance by Google against startups through its Play Store policies. The CCI had slapped a penalty of 1,338 crores. The NCLAT upheld this penalty. Google appealed this decision in the top court. CJI-led bench of the top court issued notice in this case, but is yet to hear this matter in detail. Number 3, gaming companies versus GST. Supreme Court is hearing a batch of 44 petitions by gaming companies alleging gaming notices aggregating to over 1.12 lakh crore rupees. Chandrachud-led bench of Supreme Court issued notice agreeing to hear this case, but is yet to grant a final hearing. Review petitions seeking same-sex marriage. In October of 2023, CJI-led bench of the Supreme Court refused to allow the right to marry to same-sex couples. The Supreme Court said it is for the Parliament to decide on this issue. Multiple review petitions have been filed against it. They are yet to be taken up. RG Kaur rape and murder. As a fallout, the Supreme Court had taken suo motu cognizance of this issue of safety of medical practitioners. Supreme Court had directed for a national task force to give recommendations on safety measures. The CJI assured that he will issue guidelines on safety of medical professionals. Marital rape. In the final days of holding office, CJI has started hearing a batch of applications challenging provisions granting protection to husbands committing rape with their wives. Jet Airways insolvency. Despite the Jalan-Calroc consortium emerging as the successful bidder, the resolution is stuck in between claims of non-payment by the lenders. The Supreme Court has reserved its judgment and is expected to give clarity on whether the airline can take to the skies once again. Minority status of Aligarh Muslim University. This was a case heard by a 7-judge bench headed by Justice Chandrachud. The bench will be deciding if AMU qualifies as a minority institution under Article 30. Regulation of industrial alcohol. A rare occurrence at the top court, a 9-judge bench is deciding this case, headed by none other than Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud. It has huge revenue implications as the Supreme Court will decide if state governments have the power to levy taxes on industrial alcohol. And finally, wealth redistribution. Again, a 9-judge bench headed by CJI deciding this case. The moot point here is, can the government requisition private property and redistribute it for public good? So there you have it. 10 days left. 10 major cases await clarity from the CJI. Justice Chandrachud. His last working day in Supreme Court will be November 8th. Well, you are watching India Business Hour. Now, the 4,300 crore rupee initial public offering of Waaree Energies received a stellar response from investors. The issue was fully subscribed within 2 hours of its launch. Bidding was led by non-institutional investors with nearly 8 times subscription, followed by retail with more than 3 times subscription. Waaree Energies is India's largest solar PV maker and aims to use the funds for setting up a manufacturing facility and general corporate purposes. And staying with the IPO corner, AFCON's Infrastructure has fixed a price band between 440 to 463 rupees per share for its initial public offering. The company plans to raise over 5,400 crore rupees. This includes a fresh issue worth 1,250 crore rupees and an offer for sale worth over 4,100 crore rupees. The company's management confirmed that they have reduced the size of IPO from 7,000 crore rupees earlier, added that they have roped in new investors, including ArcelorMittal.
There was also much spoken about the pre-IPO round. So if you could take us through the pre-IPO round and who all have joined in this pre-IPO round.
I would put it, we had one of the marquee investors is GIC, Government of Singapore. Then we had Enam Holdings, Akash Bansali, Madhu Kela, and also Madhu Kela from the HNI category. And from the client side, it was a pleasant surprise to us when Mr. Lakshmi Mittal from the ArcelorMittal family.
Health insurer Niva Bupa has received final observation from SEBI to raise 3,000 crore rupees through an IPO. The IPO will be a mix of fresh issue and 2,200 crore rupees worth offer for sale. The net proceeds from fresh issuance will be used to strengthen solvency levels and for general corporate purposes. Niva Bupa had filed its IPO papers in June of this year. And speaking of IPOs, Hyundai India is all set to drive into the Lal Street tomorrow. The company's IPO was fully subscribed after qualified institutional buyers came to the rescue. Hyundai India is planning to list with much fanfare. We expect about 200 Hyundai executives to fly down to Mumbai for the listing tomorrow. Hyundai India's 2,800 crore rupee, 28,000 crore rupee, I beg your pardon, IPO has been the largest in India yet. Sudarshan Kumar retraces the Hyundai journey, which began nearly 8 decades ago. Take a look.
In 1986, Hyundai made its US debut with the Excel, praised for its affordability and named Best Product by Fortune magazine. By 1991, Hyundai had developed its own proprietary engine and transmission, achieving technological independence. The 1990s brought further expansion. In 1996, Hyundai entered the Indian market with a state-of-the-art plant in Tamil Nadu. 2 years later, the launch of the Santo revolutionized Indian roads by its unique design and affordability, and it made Hyundai a household name overnight. In 1998, as Kia Motors faced bankruptcy, Hyundai acquired a 51% stake, outbidding Ford. The two companies have since shared ownership of key subsidiaries, and while Hyundai remains Kia's largest stakeholder. In the Indian market, Kia entered in the year 2019 with mid-sized SUV Kia Seltos. In India, Hyundai continued to introduce successful models like the Accent, i10 and i20, cementing its position as the second largest automaker. But it was the company's strategic pivot to SUVs marked by the launch of the Creta in 2015 that truly transformed its fortunes. SUVs now account for 67% of Hyundai's sales. In 2019, Hyundai launched India's first fully electric SUV, the Kona. Electric plans to introduce 4 more EVs in near term, including the much-anticipated Creta EV in Q4 of FY25. Today, with a market share of 14%, Hyundai is positioned to grow alongside an industry projected to expand by 4 to 5% to 6.5% through 2030. Hyundai's production capabilities are also scaling. Its Chennai facility produces 8.20 lakh cars annually, while a newly acquired plant in Maharashtra is expected to add an additional 1.70 lakh cars by FY26 and plans to further expand to 2.50 lakh units. Exports account for 20% of Hyundai's output, serving markets in West Asia and Africa, and providing a natural hedge against domestic market fluctuations. If we talk about overall earnings over the last 2 years, revenue has seen a growth in the range of 25 to 30% and profit has surged more than 50%. Now, after 28 years in India, Hyundai is making its capital market debut. In its IPO, which was a fully OFS issue, the promoter diluted 17.5% of its stake, and though the retail portion wasn't fully subscribed, the IPO was oversubscribed, overall driven by institutional investors. Lastly, about the roadmap. Hyundai India is looking to invest Rs 32,000 crore in India over the next 10 years with just one aim, to regain the lost market share. But globally, Hyundai has warned of an uncertain outlook due to intensifying competition. From a small car repair shop to a global automotive powerhouse, that's the story of Hyundai driving the future.
Well, Sudarshan there, tracing the journey of Hyundai India leading up to the IPO listing tomorrow. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates will continue right here on CNBC TV 18.